All right, everyone, there is a very, very funny story that we need to cover. The U.S. troops will be paid. $130 million was anonymously donated to make sure that U.S. soldiers actually continued to get their pay. The Democrats are livid about this, and there is a not so hidden reason why, why they're mad about this. You would think under normal circumstances, if some anonymous donor, who is presumptively domestic, although it doesn't technically matter at all, again, there's legal wiggle room around everything. Some of us have experienced that. It doesn't really matter, but the troops are actually going to get their pay. Now, I would think that would be something to celebrate about. Some private philanthropic individual decided to make sure that the soldiers would get paid while the Democrats have their temper tantrum. That's why they're pissed. Schumer and others are livid right now. Kuntz come out and all of these others. Well, we don't know who the donor is, so it's big problem. It might violate it might violate the Anti-Deficiency Act because reasons. It might violate other acts because it could be, kind of foreign money, as though money is not fungible and a lot of it doesn't come from foreign sources to begin with. Basically, the government has the ability to legalize its own illegality and illegalize things that should be legal. This is why I'm not a big fan of big government. Doesn't matter what administration it is, I would just point out the current one is at least trying to do its job. So that's something we haven't seen in a while. Mm. But this is ludicrous. These people are more incensed by the concept of our soldiers being paid. They are kind of important. They do defend the nation. I would think you would want them to, and they don't make a lot of money anyway. So you'd think that the small stipend that they're actually given should actually be given. I would think that's a good idea. They should be praising whoever this anonymous donor is. It might be the dude from Binance. We're not 100% sure. I would think you'd be praising this effort and saying, look, much like with the ballroom, Trump apparently has cozied up to someone who's capable of funding the fucking military, at least for a little while, because 130 million doesn't go very far in government. This is just troop pay. Keep in mind the differential between how much we spend on the equipment versus how much we pay the troops. I've always been a little bit uneasy about that, by the way, but this has been a running joke. God, there's a fucking joke book that it's old. It goes up through the Vietnam War, if I remember correctly, but it has stuff from fucking World War One and even the Civil War. Troops have been complaining about their poor pay since long memorial. It happens all the time. The ancient Romans used to pay troops partially in salt because it was so valuable, actually. It was more valuable by weight, actually, at one time than gold. This is why Romania developed an economy because they have, if I remember correctly, the second largest salt mine in the world. In other words, there's a bunch of dead liberals in there. Anyway, with regards to this story, the Democrats are sad. Why? Because they were hoping the troops won't get paid and Donald Trump will take political attrition and then we can hold it over the heads of Trump and the GOP. The same is true of SNAP benefits. Right now, they're on a ramble fest about how Trump is taking the SNAP benefits away from the poor. And because it takes two to tango, they are half right. Yes, there's an ongoing shutdown, and that hasn't been funded. But watch what would happen if Trump today says, well, I've found several billion dollars of discretionary spending. I'll just load that into the program while the Democrats have their wine fest over there. While they're whining and having a tantrum, I'm going to make sure that the poor don't starve to death. They will find a reason to bitch about that too. There is nothing that this fucking man can do that is right to them. Not even just for political reasons. There are people that are fucking Republicans with TDS that won't give him credit. Oh, I funded food stamps. Yeah, I got an anonymous donor to fund the fucking soldiers, by the way. And you're still complaining. He has to go through this over and over again. Then the judiciary usually gets involved and quashes whatever effort he makes. I wouldn't be surprised if a judge injuncts this payment and says, we need to investigate where this money came from. We need full disclosure, or something like that. Fucking pay the soldiers, dude. It's as simple as. You don't even need to make it a political issue, but Schumer and people like that just fucking can't help it. God damn. Mmm, glorious tea. Yeah, this one is a Tahiti tea, actually, from Jimmy. Mmm, we be clanking, that's for sure. A little bit of milk and sugar in that one, actually. Normally, I don't add either. This one, it comes out really, really nice, actually. Tastes a little bit like an energy drink, and it is caffeinated, so yeah, there's a reason why I'm actually awake at the moment. They're having a tantrum over fucking soldiers getting their pay? So what are we supposed to... In other words, the Democrats really want a scenario in which people suffer as much as possible. They're making it very goddamn plain that that's what they want to do. They want the poor to go without SNAP benefits, and they want the soldiers to go unpaid entirely. Why? So that they can get the masses organized against the Trump administration, because the buck stops here and ultimately he ends up getting the blame, even though they're the ones throwing a temper tantrum and refusing to advance a budget deal. This is the Schumer shutdown. He is trying desperately to cast it off as the Trump shutdown while inflicting as much pain on the population as possible. This has been done, by the way, before. You blame your enemy for the suffering of the people, and then you hope that they rise up and stuff. Between this and Nancy Pelosi's, shtick with regards to ICE agents and things like that, and Maxine Waters and people like her with their shtick about people in general who happen to ideologically disagree, it looks like they're trying to get another summer of love thing going. It really looks like they want riots. This does not surprise me, although it offends me, because I don't want people to be hurt and their businesses burned to the ground. But that's clearly what they're fucking aiming for. Look at that. There's no other way to interpret this. Why would you throw a bitch fit about some donor funding the troops? This is not buying tanks or anything like that. This is just making sure that grunts get their pay. Do you really begrudge them their pay? Because it seems an awful lot like that's what you're claiming. And this is just a temporary stopgap. I mean, again, they don't get paid very much, but it'll keep things going a little longer. The Democrats don't want it to keep going. They want the military to collapse. They want the banks to collapse. They want everything to collapse because they know that they're losing. And so simply smashing the system, which is a common slogan among leftoids, I would opine as well, is basically their only Hail Mary left. They don't have anything else. Their lawfare in the direct sense failed. Their lawfare in the indirect sense is failing. They keep getting countermanded because they're not advancing any policies that actually make any sense and or are constitutional, so they keep getting shot down. And so they're peeing their pants and having a fucking tantrum like a bunch of fucking babies. And Trump, of course, is blamed for the fact that the soldiers didn't get paid. Oh, wait, he found pay for the soldiers? How can we complain about that? That's the ethos. It couldn't be more goddamn clear what they're doing. They're trying to inflict pain. They're trying to make sure as many people's lives are as miserable as possible so they can implicate the current administration and blame them for problems they themselves either contributed to or were directly associated with. Just like Pelosi bitching about immigration law that she sat in on at times as the Speaker of the goddamn House. It was incepted decades ago. Nancy Pelosi is many decades old. With regards to Venezuela, with regards to striking cartel ships, that's interesting. Where were any of these people to complain that time that we drone striked a U.S. citizen over in the Middle East under the Obama administration? Ask yourselves that, and then you'll see the hypocrisy writ large. No, they're trying to punish people. They're trying to make us suffer as much as possible so that we say, well, Trump hasn't done enough. The food costs are too high. The soldiers aren't getting paid, and everyone's miserable. Even though the Biden administration incepted most of those policies in prior administrations, to some extent Trump, because he was president before as well, but prior administrations, both Republican and Democrat, built fucking immigration law, the fucking laws with regards to budgets and things like that. And this is a congressional issue. Trump barely even plays a role with regards to these things, other than lending his weight and saying, hey, can you pass a budget so that I can sign it at some point? It'd be helpful. Other than that, it's basically this is Congress's role. The House especially controls the purse strings. I would note that the Senate wields the filibuster. That's about all. Peace out.